Welcome to the Naked Podcaster. Today, I'm so excited. I'm doing a coaching episode with Deneen Joyner. Deneen, how are you today?
I'm wonderful, my dear. And you?
I'm so excited to be here with you. I've been really looking forward to this. Coaching means I have no idea what the hell's coming, and it's super fun and exciting. And so I want you to jump in and tell us about the soul reading and about your website and about you, and then you hijack me.
I'd love to. So we are doing a soul reading, and a soul reading specifically deals with family karma. It actually identifies individual family karma. It also looks at soul wounds, which are the result of this family karma. Then we also look at soul lessons, which are lessons that we need to master relating to our soul wounds so that we can heal and elevate to more consciousness, and hopefully that it will actually recalibrate us so that we can actually fulfill our purpose and our holy assignment, which is the real and true reason we are here. So a soul reading becomes a blueprint for anyone who wants to actually embark upon a self-healing journey. The practices that I use are all stemming from my bloodline, which has everything to do with Native American culture and Nigerian culture. So both sides of my family, both maternal and paternal, were highly gifted healers. I knew some of this, but I didn't know the extent of it until I actually did my own healing journey. So all of what I am actually offering to you this morning, and also to the clients that I actually do soul readings and private coaching for, is stemming from all of what I uncovered during my journey, as well as the gifts that now are fully activated because I have healed and cleared my soul. So what we're going to be doing this morning is very exciting on a number of different levels, because I'm assuming that you have been doing some work clearly. However, you probably are not maybe able to put labels on when I say family karma and when I say soul wounds and soul lessons. You probably know of some of them. However, this morning is really gonna just frame everything nicely. It's gonna give you labels, and then you'll be able to take this information and actually do with it what you will. And I hope that what you will do with it is, again, what most of my clients do, which is basically to become curious about your life in a way that you haven't before. So I'm ready to just jump in and do this soul reading. And I also, of course, would later like to just outline a little bit as it becomes more relevant as far as how people could get a soul reading and how they could privately coach with me later on, if that's okay with you.
I would love that, and I want you to share your website. I mean, we have your information from your original interview, but
Yes.
and all of the contact information is going to be in the show notes to get in touch with you. But yes, you know, I'm all about shameless self-promotion, and now people get to see you coaching.
Yes.
So I have a statement and a question. The statement is, you asked for my mother's maiden name and my father's name, and I remember distinctly, because it's been a little while, but I gave you my mom's name and I gave you my dad's name. And I was like, wow, it was really hard for me to even say his name and give you his name. Right. I really do not like my father. He was one of the meanest people I've ever known. And so that was just a statement that's interesting. And I don't know if it will tie in any way.
It does.
And I'm sure, damn it. But I want people to know that's all I had to do. All I had to do was give you my mom's full name, maiden name, and my dad's name. And it was physically, I felt it physically in my body when I gave you his name and you wrote it down. I was like, whew, I don't want to give you that information.
I remember, and I'm glad that you're bringing that up. Stop right there. Hopefully you won't lose the other part. So this is really, really valuable for your listeners to understand the soul reading, because I kind of like take my process for granted because I'm just used to doing it. But you're exactly right, Jen. So in order to do a soul reading, those are the only two things that I ask of the person. And you don't have to be connected like you and I are. You actually would physically just go on my website under soul reading and actually click on soul reading, and it actually takes you to a page that asks you those two questions. You pay for it, and then you wait 3 days after that, and depending on my availability with my schedule, and then we actually do the soul reading like we are now. It's done via Zoom. And before the world shut down, I was actually able to do it in person, via on location, under my on location services. There are people who really like the, the in-person. And so they, I've traveled distances to actually do soul readings in person. So that still is an option for people if they prefer the one-on-one intimate setting of a soul reading. And I do too. However, Zoom's the next best thing. And so primarily that's how I've been offering the soul readings and also my private coaching. So getting back to your statement about that's all you had to supply to me. So how is it that that's all you had to supply to me? It's because of my channeling ability, okay? So I'm able to channel. So what that means is actually because I'm connected to spirit world and I'm actually fully engaged and activated with my gifts, I am able to actually bring in information concerning you. So before this process started, I actually meditated and prayed on your behalf. And so during that meditation, I'm actually inviting in all of your divine energies. And that means your ancestors, that means your spirit guides, that means your angels. And that also means any other divine forces that are willing and able to step forth on your behalf to shed enlightenment for your personal evolution and growth. Because the spirit world knows who I am. They know that I can hear ancestors. That is one of my main spiritual gifts, is that not only can I hear my ancestors, but I can hear yours and everyone else's. So I hear them, okay? I invite them in. They know that that I mean well, that I'm here to help and serve on earth. And so they step forth and they will share and enlighten me so that I can share and enlighten you.
Yay. Okay. I'm glad that you talked about that. And I knew that information beforehand, but yes, that was great. And I love also that you said earlier that it will give a label to what I kind of feel, but I can't recognize or pinpoint. It's very peripheral for me.
Yes.
Right. And so it's awesome that it doesn't have to be so peripheral anymore. So that's very cool. I want you to just tie in Christianity, because I know you're a God girl.
Yes.
So a lot of times when people hear this stuff, they're like, it's so woo-woo and it's not right. But it's bigger that's not the case. We can use words that like spirit or source or whatever word fits for you, but can you tie that in for me?
Sure. Well, for me, again, so I'm coming from two distinct cultures. The Native American culture is tied to my maternal, my mother's side. And so my mother was my primary caretaker. So therefore, that's mainly where all of my values, beliefs, responses, and things come from. Okay, because my father was very distant, was in and out of our home until he finally just left, and he abandoned me when I was 7. So he was not in my life. However, he was in my sister's. I'm the baby of the family, daughter number 7. And so he was in everyone else's life but mine. So I really didn't have that relationship with him. So my mother primarily raised me. So that's where all of my beliefs and things come from. My mother was a Christian woman. Most Native American people practice Christianity, okay? But there's room. So it's not like a very staunch, dogma, we only do this and that. No, there was, clearly more spirituality with Native American people than there was per se religion, okay? When we say God, we reference the Great Spirit, okay? And the Great Spirit is all-knowing, and just like, it's the same. It's the same as when you say God. That's what we're thinking of when we say God. Even though they say Great Spirit, that's what they're referencing, okay? Because to them, that is it. There is no other. It's the Great Spirit. because we all are spirits, whether we realize that or not. We really are spiritual beings, but we've forgotten that. And so when we say great spirit, then we know that this person is over all spirits.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yes.
Because yes, I knew that about you, but I wanted to just make that clarification. Okay, jump in, hijack me.
Just seatbelt on, let's go. Okay, so Jen, I want you to know we're going to start with family karma, okay? And I want you to know how this primarily works when it comes to soul readings, okay? So as I mentioned, I invite in and I enlist their help, spirit help, divine help. And I say, how can I best help Jen? You tell me what it is that we need to uncover and discover for her during this soul reading. And so when we say family karma, just again for your listening audience, I want you to know that family karma could mean a number of different things. They primarily are basically the unresolved pain that a family has that is basically underlying, and it's also invisible, and it's also acceptable. So when we think of family karma, we can think of maybe a string of divorces. Nobody in a family has stayed divorced. We might even think about, cancer. So there's health issues. There's been, a string of cancer that has run rampant in this family. We can think of incarcerations. There's, men and women who've been incarcerated in this family. So we could think of abandonment. Nobody stays around. Maybe the father never stays, or maybe the mother never stays. And then we could also look at basically a father wound or a mother wound. And we'll get to that in a minute, what that actually means. So those are just examples of what family karma could look like in any family. And it's things that are acceptable. Like I said, nobody really looks at it. They know it's there, but nobody really has ever taken the opportunity to really investigate it as to why is there such a string of things that have carried forth generation to generation. So I'm going to start with your family karma. The family karma that came through the strongest was your paternal, which means your father's side of the family. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't have maternal family karma. It just means the paternal outweighed the maternal. Okay, and that's what came through. Usually what happens during these soul readings is the thing that we need to look at the most is the thing that comes up. So right now we're looking at paternal, your paternal ancestor. So this is the things that have carried on generation to generation. Some of these things you may be aware of, some of them you might not be. The first thing that came through was that the karma is depression and anxiety. There also was abuse. This could be verbal and or physical. I actually resonated with the verbal more so than physical, but we can talk about that in a minute. There was also denial, meaning denial of truths, things that were actually occurring that were wrong in the family, basically sweeping things under the rug. When I say denial, that's what I'm meaning. That's the culture, that's the generational karma that's been on your paternal side, that there is denial of things, denial of truths. There has been a lot of emotional discord, a lack and disconnection of love, expression of love, able to emote feelings. And then the last that came through was that there was an issue with communication. And that kind of ties into, again, the emotional discord, not being able to emote, not being able to show and express easily. That would tie into communication for sure. Because if you're not able to emote, if you're not able to express yourself in that way, then clearly you're shut down and you can't communicate. So let's stop there and let's see if any of these things are resonating with you as that you could, and we're just focusing right now on dad's side of the family. Just think about your dad, your own relationship with him, and what you saw when you were growing up. Does any of these things fit?
Yeah, actually, I never met anyone on my father's side of the family. He was really embarrassed of them.
Okay.
So I grew up in Rhode Island. They were all from Fayetteville, Arkansas, and there was almost no discussion about them. He was really embarrassed about them, and he didn't want me to know a lot about them, but I did learn some things.
Okay.
There's a lot of, like, his father, according to the information I got, my paternal grandfather sexually abused a lot of his grandkids.
Okay.
So as far as sweeping it under the rug, when I was going through infertility, that's when I started reaching out to that side of the family to see if there was anything. Like, I don't have medical history on my father's side of the family, so that was when I started reaching out to them, and women did not talk about that. I knew that every woman in the family pretty much had had a hysterectomy in their 30s, but there was no reason why. They,
Right.
they do not talk about this stuff.
Yes.
So the sweeping under the rug, yeah, because I think there's a like rampant alcoholism. So I don't know about depression and anxiety. I do know that there was a lot of abuse. A lot was physical. I don't know if it was verbal more. I mean, like, I really don't have much of a connection to
Sure.
my father's side.
Sure.
What I thought was interesting is that my father is one of the meanest people I've ever met, but yet he was embarrassed about his side of the family and me meeting them because they were such horrible people. And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, dude, have you not looked in the mirror?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think, as far as a disconnect or emotional discord, my father was perpetuating his family legacy of abuse and alcoholism.
Yes.
Um, but didn't connect with the fact that he was doing the exact same stuff he hated them
That's
for.
right. That's right.
Right. And
Yeah.
as far as the, like, no expressions of love or communication or discord, I mean, like, I tried to reach out to these people that I did not know, and I was a family member, and I was really, really, it was going through infertility was a stressful, emotional time in my life, and I wanted to get information and connection, and it
Sure.
was not there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think for the most part on his side of the family, it's just a complete disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I couldn't get that connection or just information, just give me information. Um, it was like, no harm, no foul. I didn't lose anything because I didn't have a
Right.
connection before, but I also knew, like, that was not where I was going to get any kind of connection or information.
Yes. Yes. I get what you're
So,
saying for sure.
so
Yes.
I disconnected from even trying.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that makes sense too, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. So this is really going to be really helpful for you because you just expressed that you didn't have a relationship with this side of the family. So you therefore really don't have much to go on except for what you saw in your father. And that's enough for sure.
Right.
You know, so what I have described to you is very, it really is telling. And what you just described about how your father is, and we'll get into even more about that in a minute, about his upbringing, because that actually came through. So it'll give you more of a picture of how he grew up. The thing that I want to say to you right now, Jen, moving forward is what I tell all of my clients when I do soul readings and when I do privately coaching with them, is that from this point forward, all of the information that I will be sharing with you no longer has a blame, shame, or judgment to it. We are really just using this information for you to be able to understand who you are, how you came to be, and who your teachers were. Your teachers are your mother and your father, okay? So we're not using it to judge them. We're using it for our own education at this point. Because now I want you to actually embrace yourself and to actually start to look at your life as though you are a student of your life. So any information that you get, any information, you're only using it for that purposes only, so that you can examine it, that you can start to correlate, okay, that's why I'm this way, that's why I'm not that way, and that's why they were that way. So there's no shame, no blame, no judgment. It's really just we're collecting information, we're sifting through it, and we're putting it in piles so that we can understand how we came to be.
Great. Awesome.
Okay. So I want to share a little bit about your dad and how he grew up. Okay. So this was the dynamics of his family. Okay. He grew up in a very abusive home, extremely abusive. It was very cold and distant and chaotic. It was not your typical parent-child relationship at all. There was no nurturing. There was none of that at all. Your father felt like he was a burden, often felt like he was a burden. So he did not feel loved. He did not feel safe and secure. And he really did not have anyone that he could find solace in, or that he could find comfort in, or any of that. He was subjected to this most his life, most his childhood, he was. And because of that, he grew numb. So he learned how to cope. And his way of coping in that type of dynamic was to shut down. And that's what most of us do. That is a safety measure. And it's something that happens instinctively. It's not anything that most people will resign to doing. They just tell themselves, okay, I'm shutting down so that I don't feel the pain. I'm shutting down so that I don't feel loved. I'm shutting down so that I don't see what's going on around me, which is pretty crazy. Most of us don't do that consciously. It's an unconscious safety thing that happens. We may, as we go through our childhood, we may, from time to time, say to ourselves, you know, I don't feel safe, I don't feel, and so I don't really want to feel this. We may say those things from time to time, but there's not really a conscious agreement, is what I'm saying. And so this was the way that your dad was able to basically get through his childhood, was to become disconnected and numb. So because of that right there, I just want you to now, and then also later, once we end our soul reading session today, I would really like for you to just take some time to journal on that piece right there of uncovering how your father grew up as a child. I want you really to think about him as a little boy and not as a dad. I want you to think about him being a child and being subjected to those conditions that I just mentioned. And see if you're able to find a level of compassion for that child, the child that's not your dad yet, but that he's a little boy, and that he's in a very tumultuous situation out of his control, and that he didn't feel loved, that he was never given love, he was never told that he was loved, and that there was nothing but abuse that actually surrounded him. So I'd like for you later on to actually just try to take some time to actually just feel into that and actually journal about that little boy. And now what we're going to do is actually move into, as a result of that, now I want you to understand how your family dynamics, so the childhood that you grew up in, came to be. Because primarily what you actually were privy to while you were growing up, your whole emotional framework, your family dynamics were coming from your dad. Your dad was the primary, and he was the strong, his characteristics, his karma is what pulled through. So that is your experience. I'm not saying that your mom, like I said initially, that your mom didn't have some of her own, because she did. However, in this session, this is what pulled through, was your dad's. I want you to know that your mom was a co-conspirator to this. So when I say that, I mean that she was a silent witness. She was a silent partner to your dad's volatile, emotions, explosive, his being. She basically co-signed that. She didn't stop him. And so we can talk about that a little bit more now, because that's what really came through, that he was very controlling. And that, like you said, when you said that he was a mean person, I get that for sure. Very, just very his emotions were just like really, really dark. And that, you know, again, if we can correlate to what I just described, this little boy who's now a man, then you can kind of start to understand how he came to be. So can we talk a little bit about your family dynamics? And when I said about your mom being basically like a co-conspirator, can you tell me a little bit about your mom?
Yeah, my parents divorced when I was 6, and my dad moved to a different state. So from the time I was 6 until he died, I saw him, I think it was only 6 times. I saw my father only 6 times from, yeah. When I wrote my book, I had to figure that out. And I was actually surprised. It seemed like a lot more because he was, but it was mostly phone calls. And as far as my mom being a co-conspirator, when I really, really dug in and had to investigate my childhood and write about it, that dysfunction, she specifically was rarely abusive. I mean, I think if I had grown up in a different situation, she could have been a really good mom.
Yeah.
I think she went from one abusive relationship to the next. And in her words, she said to me once, I allowed myself to be in very dangerous situations, which in turn put my sister and I in very dangerous situations. So the abuse didn't come directly from my mom. It came from her allowing it.
That's right. That's right. So that's what we mean by co-conspirator, that she didn't intervene.
So yes. No, she did not. And I think it's interesting because I have a recollection of her talking about, and I know both my parents came from very abusive situations, and I understand that. And after 15 years of foster care, it was me trying to take these kids like myself and like my parents and change that narrative for them, because I do understand that. My issue with that is still in allowing those situations to happen, knowing that they're wrong, because my parents knew what they felt like as those little kids going through those abusive situations. So when a child of abuse and dysfunction becomes the perpetrator of abuse and dysfunction, they perpetuate that cycle. I struggle with that. Yes, I understand where you came from, and I have a tremendous amount of compassion from where my parents came from. It does not excuse the fact that they still allowed it to occur. They knew what it felt like and allowed it. Or my father was the one being abusive. My mother was the one allowing those dangerous situations. She was the co-conspirator, knowing how it felt as a child. So I think my anger or frustration or disconnect with them has been understanding them from the child perspective, and then understanding how it carried through in the adult, and then they did it anyway. So I remember my mom saying that her dad was really abusive and that her mother allowed it to happen.
Okay, see, so we can see that karma, right?
My dad said my father was this horrible person for doing this and then did those things. Yes, they perpetuated those cycles. They allowed them to happen. So yes, I do understand that. And she was a co-conspirator, and not as much, maybe, I think just in her personality, she was. With my dad, it was mostly phone conversations. And in her defense, those times that I saw my father, one of them, I was an adult. I was about 22. I had a 1-year-old daughter myself. And I stopped and saw him for just a couple of hours when I was driving through the area. But prior to that, the other 5, one was in high school, one was in junior high school. I think she was trying to, in her own way, not keep my father from me, or to see the good in him and try to help foster that relationship. There was no reason that she would have ever not wanted me to talk to him on the phone. He was super abusive on the phone, and she didn't realize that, but she was doing the right thing by allowing us to attempt a relationship.
Sure.
It's interesting with my dad. She may have been a co-conspirator, but I mean, I really see her, in her defense, and I'm shocked at this because I wouldn't have thought of it.
Yes.
Offended my mother, but she was actually trying to do the right thing by her kids and allowing that relationship.
Sure. I get that. I do.
It was terrible, but yeah.
I get what you're saying. And let me just say this quickly, because you raise a very valid point that most people will raise when it comes to just trying to wrap your mind around, as you stated, they came from similar backgrounds, therefore they perpetuated it with me. So how is it that, basically they get a pass? So this is what I will say to you. Okay, so there are people, and I know you know this, there are people who will remain numb to their life, their whole entire life. They know things happen, and that's all they do is know them. They don't act upon them. They don't heal them. They don't examine them. Then there are people like you and I who are the black sheep of the family, who, because of our, our being an empath, because we feel so deeply. Not only do we feel our own stuff, we feel other people's. That's not a mistake. That wasn't an accident. That you, out of everybody else in your family, have always been the most sensitive to what's been going on. Okay? It's because of that sensitivity, because of those gifts that are in you that make you different than everybody else. That's why you're a black sheep, because you don't fit in. Thank God. Right? So because of that, because we don't fit in, there is something inside of us that will not rest with what everybody else seems to be okay with. So your dad and your mom were not a black sheep. If they were a black sheep, then your whole family dynamic would have been different. Do you understand that? Mm-hmm. If it would have been your mom, if your mom was a black sheep, she wouldn't have been the co-conspirator. She would have been telling your dad, you're not doing this to my kids. You're not going to raise your voice around. You get what I'm saying? If your dad had been the black sheep, then you wouldn't have been subjected to any of what I described to you. And you wouldn't have felt the hate, that he was angry, that he was mean, that all the things that you have mentioned, you would have known he was a work in progress. But he wasn't the black sheep. He wasn't the black sheep either, but you are.
Well, that's a good thing. Yeah. And I mean, I know, as a side note, my kids came forward 5.5 years ago and said that my ex-husband, their dad was being abusive to them. And that day they didn't go back. And 16 days later, I was in court.
Okay.
I was an advocate.
See? And that's what I'm talking about.
Right.
Because you have that. You have that fire in you. You know when you know what I mean? You call bullshit. You know when it's
right. Not only was I wasn't going to perpetuate any of the cycle.
See?
I was also going to protect them from that.
That's right. That's
and
right.
We're limited in that area, but I think, that's, anyway, keep going.
Okay. But no, that's good. It's good.
Yeah, it is good. And I've known that.
Yeah.
And I had to come to terms at some point with the fact that I can be compassionate for the child in my parent, and I can be pissed at their adult behavior.
Yeah.
I mean, as an adult, I'm turning 50 this year. I understand they were trying to live their story at the same time they're trying to raise parents, because we all are doing that, and kids don't understand that. So even in my adult self, I can look back and there is an amount of compassion or forgiveness to a point.
Yeah. Right. That's right.
And then the line is drawn for me.
That's right. Like,
yeah, I get it, but still, that is not an excuse or justification for you to continue perpetuating.
That's right.
So yes, they definitely were perpetuating, and I knew that. There was a certain point in my life that, not as a young kid, but there was a certain point in my life as a teenager or a young adult that I understood that, but it didn't excuse it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it doesn't take the pain, it doesn't make it any less, for sure. Yeah. I get that. Okay. So we're going to now move into more so things about you.
Oh, all right.
So as a result, as a result of all of this, the family karma, the family dynamics that you grew up in, basically what came in was who you are, how you came to be as a result of all of this. And so I already touched on it. You're a black sheep, for sure. You're the black sheep of the family. You're also a rebel, for sure. Rebel, all day long. It's like, like I said, you call bullshit. And you're like, look, you can't tell me it's red when I know that it's purple. You can try, but I ain't buying it. And you'll stand up for yourself. Like, you are gutsy. Like, you are like, you know, you got this like fire inside you. And it's just like, it's beautiful. It's beautiful that you have this rebel spirit. I wish more people had a rebel spirit, you know? You have that. You go against the grain. You don't care if 500 people are going that way, and Jen is like, look, it's this way. Guess what? Jen's going this way.
Uh-huh.
Right? Mm-hmm. You're like, you don't have to be with the pack. I mean, you know what I mean? If that's what their conviction is, it doesn't have to be yours. You're like, no, I'll chart my own course. You also, let me see here. It's so funny because sometimes I can't read my own writing because it's being channeled and I'm trying to hurry up. It's like they're dictating to me. I'm like, oh yeah, hold on. Like, you know, okay. And also what came through was that because of all of what I just described about you, it wasn't easy getting to be this rebel. You really paid a big price emotionally in going against the grain, against the pack. You really did. And I want you to be able to, at some point, honor that. Honor what you have sacrificed. Honor what it created in you and for you to be able to say, no, I'm not doing what everybody else has done in this family. It has to be different. And I'm going to be that difference, and I'm going to make it different. It's not easy to do that. I know that you know that, but I want you to be able to honor that. I want you really to be able to honor that, Jen, because this is huge. For you to be able to say, I can't perpetuate this. I won't perpetuate this. This will not be my children's life. It will not. That's huge. That's huge. Yes. So you went above and beyond to basically work on that and to remove yourself from that, that dynamic, to break that mold finally. You have vowed to be emotionally present, loving, and kind to your children. You literally want to mother the world.
Well, that explains Mom of 18, doesn't it? I mean, like,
when they told me that, I was like, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, I wonder if she knows that.
It's like, we find, my family, my kids and I, always like stray animals attract themselves to us, and I used to just joke, like, it just needs a mom and some love. That's all. Like, just, that dog just needs a mom and some love. And so, yeah,
I know.
It's like it's almost an illness. So yes.
But you know what? Hey, you know what? There's worse things that you could have, right?
Yeah, a lot worse. Yes, I do. I think the world needs to be mothered for sure.
Yeah. But I mean, seriously, I can't think of a better person to do it.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm trying. I'm failing forward.
Look, I'm giving you a virtual hug right now. Okay. So now we're going to move into some little deeper things, okay? Because again, we're looking at the family karma that we mentioned. We're looking at the family dynamic that you grew up in. So now what happens as a result of the karma and the dynamic that you grew up in, now it actually starts to create soul wounds. Okay? The soul wounds are the things that actually were created, like I said, as a result of the circumstances that you grew up in. They're not things that we consciously select. They just are. They happen. It's just like if you were to, bump into something and you bruised your knee, then you're going to have that bruise until it heals, right? And so if you don't care for it, if it becomes a gash or infected, if you don't do something to actually make it healthy, then it's going to actually continue to get worse. So when we think of soul wounds, I want you to think about that. That's basically how it happens. And it's really unknowing and unconscious thing. And so because we don't seek the health, which is the healing and acknowledgement that it desires, then what happens is it just basically remains there until we actually can give it a name. So I want to tell you what your soul wounds are, and then I'm going to actually kind of rewind a little bit and tell you what it kind of looks like in your world. Okay, so your soul wounds are basically blame. Okay, so there might be instances where you feel like you unconsciously blame yourself for things.
Okay.
It could be tied to your upbringing, your parents, and then also you tend to also blame your parents and or others for things. We'll get into this in a minute. So blame is that.
Okay.
Then also one of your wounds is that you have an aversion to authority.
Sorry, didn't mean to choke on that one. Okay. Yes, I do.
Okay. Yes. And then also, this is a big one too, under wounds, control. So this is a real tricky one for most people. Okay. So people who have the control wound, they avoid situations and or emotions that make them feel out of control.
Okay.
So there are scenarios possibly that are second nature to you, where you always feel like you need to be the one who does the initiation of things, or that you just it could be small tasks, it could be large ones, but you feel like you need to you need to be the one who basically can just make sure that it's this way or that way, because you don't necessarily want to be at somebody else's mercy. Not that you don't trust per se, but you don't like that really. You really don't like surprises. I'm not talking about good surprises. I'm talking about surprises that take you off your mark. Okay. So these are the things that came up. And then also, let me see here. Judgment was another one. Judgment can be judgment of yourself, judgment of others. And then this also was an interesting one when it came to just, and I don't really know how to like describe this, but how they showed me was that, again, when it came to your family, like you really struggle with finding any fond memories. And we'll revisit all of this in 1 second. Well, maybe we won't. Maybe we'll just start there, and I'll go back to a couple other things I have. So let's just kind of break these down for a little bit, and you tell me if any of this resonates with you. Let's start with the blame wound. Do you feel?
When my parents divorced at 6, I thought it was my fault. I was the oldest of 2 kids. I was 6 years old. That's super, super common with kids that age. Like if I had been better, if I had been a good girl, and I know and kids are not good at expressing, like you can't say,
No.
Hey, by the way, I'm feeling like I'm blaming myself for this. You don't have the vocabulary or the skills, right? So yes, I thought it was my fault. And kids don't understand the big picture. We don't have life experience. So that was the first time I blamed myself. And then that has carried through in other relationships. If a relationship fails, I used to say that's my biggest failure. I felt a lot of shame around that. And even though, and I took the blame because I initiated the divorce, for example. Like things were going to shit in the relationship. And I want to work on them. I want to work on them until I am exhausted trying to make things work. not that I'm any hero. Maybe I'm not doing it well or right, or I'm trying too hard. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that goes in that. But I know that in every situation, retrospectively, I know that I did everything that I could to make that relationship successful. And in the end, every single time I pull the plug. And I know I have said, I don't care if I have to take the blame for this relationship ending, because I've done everything that I can. So if that makes everybody feel better that I'm taking the blame for it, because I'm the one that initiated the divorce. I'm the one that packed my shit and left.
Yes.
I felt like, I'm strong enough to take that burden. I don't care. Because it's dead. This is done. And I'm just the only one that's going to admit it. And I'm not willing to stay in a situation.
Oh, no, I don't blame you.
I am not willing to stay in a situation that I have tried to the best of my ability. And like, we're talking therapy and church and like whatever it takes.
Yes.
For a year, for longer. Like, it didn't go to shit yesterday and I'm out today. It went to shit a couple of years ago.
Sure.
I stood up for myself a year ago. And now I'm done. So I have no problem taking the blame, because I think that that's a bullshit thing that we say. If that makes the other person, but yeah, that word comes up a lot. And I think I've just felt like when I was a kid, I wasn't strong enough to take the blame, and it wasn't my blame to carry. And eventually you go through the process and realize that. But in my future adult self, I knew that didn't bother me. It didn't bother me at all to take the blame. Because I think that that's misguided. And if other people need that in order to feel okay about themselves, cool. Peace out. So yeah, that definitely. I'm not sure about blaming others. I think that people don't, I would have to say blame's a strong word.
It is.
I felt shame that I couldn't do more. Even if I felt like I'd done everything I could, that there wasn't something more I could have done to have things end differently, not just in relationships, but in life in general. I try really, really, really hard. Blame is tough, but I don't think people take the responsibility. I think if we all sat down, like just in the situation of my dad and my mom and I, and you could throw my sister in there too. Like if the four of us had to sit down and have a conversation of whose ownership or responsibility was that part, I know that the blame isn't all mine. And I know that placing the blame on someone else isn't the right way to do it either. I think when things get hard, we don't shoulder the responsibility the way it should be.
That's right.
And so I struggle with that.
Yes.
But in that, I'm okay with my part.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's a good thing, you know? Yeah, it's you're right, exactly right. And I think what they were really alluding to here, you know, was, you know, you have the tendency to, you know, own your part, of course, which is more than most people will, but also just recognizing, like you said, the role that other people played. Not necessarily so that you're pointing the finger, look at you, you did da-da-da-da, but just basically just saying, it wasn't just me. There were other players here. What did they add to this dynamic? What did they, you know, and even if they can't own it, it's okay. Just the fact that you're able to decipher what each person did, you know, and just realizing that, okay, you know, there definitely was 4 players here.
In whatever
situation. It wasn't just Jen.
No, and I think that carried forward into my relationships when there's 2 of us and it's not going well. If you need me to take all the blame for that, cool, because I know that that's BS. I know that but if that makes you feel better and I can just be the pretend bad guy, I don't care. I'm still not going to put up with anything. So I'm cool shouldering the blame too, because I think that that's an illusion. So that's where I'm at with blame.
Okay. Now, what about this aversion to authority? Because you laughed when I said it.
Oh, I just.
What'd you say? How long do we have?
No, you know what? Here's the thing. I lived in Alaska for 10 years and it was my favorite place to live because the government lets the people make the choice. So it's not about me thinking I'm right and authority is not right. It's about distributing authority in a way that the system works better as a whole, whether that's politically or religiously or in my family, or it doesn't matter. I know that we all have our own zone of genius. So I want the authority in that department, that be their zone of genius. So it's not as much about me, and I don't want to be the authority in every way. I don't think I'm right. I think I'm one perception, and it's not my zone of genius. So I'll give a silly example. I love doing races for running.
Okay.
So someone asked me several years ago, well, why don't you be a race director? Oh, not my zone of genius. Okay, so I don't have a problem with the person who is being a race director, and I wouldn't mind being on the committee to make it better, but I don't want to be the race director, if that makes sense. So I'm super cool with people being in authority as long as they're the person that's their zone of genius, I guess.
Yeah. And I think when this was said to me, that you have, an aversion to authority, it came to me more so, of course, related to your dad, the role that he played over your life, controlling your life in the vein that he did when he was there. And so you may be unconsciously, and I'm not necessarily talking about what you just described, but there may be instances, and I just want you to just like be mindful and see.
Yeah.
There may be instances where where there might be a scenario where it's not necessarily as cut and dry as what you just described, that somebody, is the authority over a certain thing. It might be, it might even be in your relationship with your husband. So maybe he says, whatever, he wants to do this. And, like as a family, I want you to check in with that and find out, what does that feel like when he possibly takes a step upwards versus a step back and lets you basically rule the roost? What would that look like if he did say, no, this is how we're going to do it, and that's it? What would that do? And I'm not saying there won't be dialogue, but what I'm saying is, how would Jen feel, if your husband basically just took the Tarzan approach and said, Jen, we're doing it this way, and that's it. Like, we're doing it this way. So that's what I was thinking when they said authority and aversion, is that I want you to be mindful of scenarios, because they're not always like that, which you just described with the, with the running. It could be something as subtle, but not so subtle as, oh, I don't like that tone, or I don't like, who do you think you are telling me? I want you to check in.
Okay, we have conversations about this actually, and I think he should be more like that. I think when a man leads his family in a way that's righteous and compassionate and empathetic, it is the most beautiful balance.
Isn't it? I agree.
Sexy as hell. So we actually have conversations like that. So I love that. Yeah, but I do have to check. Yeah, it's that whole, but if you're doing it in a way that's not righteous and compassionate and empathetic, then I definitely would have a problem with it.
Yeah,
it's a check-in with me. I have to check in with that.
It is. And it's so when it's not that way, when it's not the righteous and compassionate, then I still want you to check in and say, okay, here it is. This is just as a trigger, because there's triggers to our wounds. We're talking about your wounds. So that could be a trigger right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Back to little Jen.
Yeah, it has been a trigger. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, because I know I mentioned other things, but for time's sake, I want to just kind of jump ahead to basically, again, things that kind of flowed through that I really want you to be, aware of. And for you, and I thought this was really interesting. I have to say that when I received this information, it was like really cool. You have what I would call it's a duality playing out in your life that really is the foundation for all of the lessons that you need to be mindful of, and you need to master so that you can start healing at a deeper level, gaining more consciousness and awareness about your wounds, your karma, and all of that good stuff. I've never had it happen like that, where there was a foundation set ahead and then everything just basically builds on that. So if you can be mindful that there's always for you a duality to everything in your life, which is pretty much the case for all of us. But what I'm saying is, for you in particular, your guides, your ancestors said, we want her to know about duality. We want her to know that there's light and that there's darkness to her. And that if she can stay balanced, she's going to do a lot better. She can't have too much of something this way or too much of anything this way, because that's when she's going to feel off.
Mm-hmm.
We need to have her here at all times.
Okay.
So they mentioned that they want you to be more conscious. They want you to gain more consciousness. This will greatly help you with seeing things for what they are and ensuring that you have that balance in all areas of your life. They want you to be mindful of your shadow and light forces and how they play out in your life. They also wanted you to be aware of sacrificing too much. They want you to find a balance between sacrifice versus empowerment. When they said that to me, it felt like they see you doing for other people when they can do it for themselves. And they want you to check that.
Okay.
When you're able to set somebody up to do it, then that's empowerment. You're basically saying, I trust that you could do this task. I trust that you can do whatever, but I'm not going to do it for you. So they want you to watch that, because you can become very overwhelmed in sacrificing and doing for other people when they can do it for themselves. And that includes your children.
Mm-hmm.
They want you to find balance versus overgiving. Is there anything you want to say about what I just said to you, even though that was a mouthful?
I don't know how to gain more consciousness, and I believe 100% in duality in everyone.
Yes.
But I mean, there's nothing about that I disagree with, except, and my kids were actually the first thing that came to mind in when they can do something for themselves. I try I am good at getting stuff done. That doesn't mean that I need to be doing it.
Right. That's right. That's right. That's right.
So I do try to be mindful that I don't need to do all the things. Yeah.
Because you're going to get overwhelmed if you're not already and exhausted. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But, when you're talking about, you don't know how to become more conscious of certain things, it really will come. Your consciousness will come once you start to seek balance every day in everything that you're doing, that you're conscious to that goal right there, that I'm going to make sure that I'm not over giving, that I'm not sacrificing beyond what I should be doing, putting different boundaries and limitations on what you normally would do. It's going to actually increase your consciousness, because you're not going to be distracted in doing all the other things you normally do. So it's not going to be that automatic pilot situation, because you're actually saying to yourself every day, and sometimes every moment, that, okay, I need to reel back in because I'm feeling off. I need to be here. And what can bring me here? And you already know what you usually do in a given day. And you pretty much will know what needs to stop so that it'll bring you into more balance. And when you're in balance, then that's when the consciousness elevates, because now you're free and you're open and you're aware and you know what's going on here.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I thought this was interesting. One of the things that I also do is that I will ask your guides if there are any of your chakras that are blocked.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So
Lay it on me.
yeah, I know, right? Just quickly again for your listeners, chakras, and I would invite for them to actually look up what chakras are if they don't know what they are. But there are 7 energy portals that are actually placed throughout our body, and they're invisible, and they actually keep us connected to spirit world. Okay, so when you hear people such as myself say that we are spiritual beings, it is true. We are. We're spiritual beings. We just happen to be here in earthly form. But how we stay connected to source, to God, to Great Spirit is through these energy portals that are uniquely placed strategically throughout our body. So look up chakras and you'll learn more. For you, my dear, when I asked were any of your chakras blocked, and this is a temporary block. It doesn't mean that it's a lifetime block. You won't be able to unblock it, but this is what came through, was that your third eye is blocked.
Oh, really?
Your third eye, of course, is intuition and wisdom. Okay, so basically, this could mean a number of different things. It lends to basically really just looking into being motivated more so by truth, being motivated more so by divine will versus our own will. So making sure that we're, again, consciously aware of we're not coming from a place of our will versus over the will. So if we can, actually just meditate will actually help with that. Meditation, Reiki, basically inviting in those divine energies daily and saying, okay, I give you permission to be a part of this day. I ask for your guidance. Please show me anything that, that I need to be mindful of. Please order my steps, all of those things. So when you are able to do that every day, when you can invite them in every day and ask them to be your guide throughout the day, then they will do that. And then you for sure will know that you are not using your will versus theirs. There may be times throughout the day, just because we're used to really just, giving into our own will versus what we're supposed to be doing, then you can actually just check in and activate it again and just say, I need you. I need you. I want to make sure that I'm doing what it is that I'm supposed to be doing. And they will let you know. You will feel it. You'll either feel like, okay, yeah, I wasn't supposed to be doing that. And I didn't think I was supposed to, but now I know. Or you can just say, okay, cool. That was just validation. I'm on the right path. I'm moving on with my day. But you can definitely do meditation and Reiki. Reiki will actually reset that and clear your third eye. More sleep. With a mom of 18, yeah, right, huh? Sleep.
I love
Being
sleep.
mindful of your diet, taking in more natural nutrients and green vegetables and things of that nature, water. And then also doing just affirmations, almost like what I just said, before you start your meditation, that, you want to make sure that you are going to be basically mindful of your duality, that you're going to be, your goal is to stay centered, that you don't want to be, out of balance, and that you want them to basically guide you throughout your day, and you're willing and open to doing that. Do you have any questions of me so far?
No, I am enjoying this. I like listening to this.
Good, great. Okay. Now we're going to get into your soul lessons, and then I'm going to actually share with you who I believe came through on your behalf and actually shared some enlightenment for you moving forward. Okay. So your soul lessons, those are the things that are actually related to your soul wounds that we talked about just a minute ago. And they're also related to your family karma. So these are things that are actually proponents to healing your soul, if you can be mindful of them. And I also want to let you know that they are likened to a life test, meaning you will have a scenario that will show up in your life that will be reminiscent of one or all of these things. And if you're conscious and aware of them, then you'll know that they actually are one of your soul lessons, and you'll be more likely to respond to it in a way that actually promotes healing. whenever a lesson is actually presented to us, more than less, we're not even aware of it because we're living our life. But these lessons have been presented to you a gazillion times over.
Okay.
And so because you're not aware of, again, you didn't know what your wounds were, you didn't know what your karma was, and you also didn't know what your lessons are. They just kind of went over your head. Sometimes you mastered them, sometimes you didn't. But now my hope for you is now that you will have language to describe exactly what your soul lessons are, that you'll be more open and aware to when scenarios are presented to you for healing's sake, that you will actually respond in a way that actually will engage you to higher evolution. Your soul lessons are forgiveness,
Okay.
gratitude, patience, peace.
Those are things you don't pray for, because then you'll get trials. Never
also,
pray for patience.
You have been, you said?
No, like you never pray for those
Oh, okay.
things. 'Cause then you get, God's like, oh, I'll teach you patience. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's it, you know. And of course, like I also added this to your lesson, was duality, that duality.
Okay.
That kept coming up, that just kept coming up. So add that as your soul lesson as well.
Okay.
And that duality, like I said, just speaks to your conscious awareness of not, that's right, not going over, but stayed here. And being mindful that you do have some dark shadow. We all do. We all have those dark shadows, which are connected to our karma and our wounds for sure. But they present us with the opportunity to be mindful, and we can actually heal them if we don't stuff them down and if we don't say, no, I don't have any dark forces. We know we have them, but we're aware of them, and we know that they create opportunities for healing. So for yours, like I said, you have the duality, forgiveness, gratitude, patience, and peace. I think they're all pretty much self-explanatory, where, you know, where you're concerned and where, you know, where we've been in this session. And so I think that you would definitely know scenarios that actually presented themselves that actually would give you the opportunity to be mindful of these things.
Yep.
Okay. Do you have any questions of me before I move into the final stage, which is that just the messages that came through for your enlightenment from a dearly departed person?
No, I don't have any questions so far. You're right. It's pretty self-explanatory.
Okay,
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay.
This, I'm very curious about this part.
Okay, so this, yeah, so I thought, especially with the conversation we just had about you not having any communication, any relationship with your dad's side of the family, this is really interesting. And I don't know if you would actually know her name, but it's tied to your dad's side of the family. The person that came through, I believe, is either his mother or his mother's mother. So it was a grandma figure or a great grandma.
Okay.
Do you know either of their names? They won't tell me their name, but if I say their name and I say, is your name, then they usually will validate for me. So if you know their names, you can even tell me later if you don't remember.
I don't remember, and I know I have it written down because I did some genealogy, and I would think it was his, I mean, if I had to guess, it would be his mother's mother.
That's who I think it is. It is, because I just got, it's her. Find out what her name is, because she just told me. She's here. She's here right now. So it is. It's your paternal grandma, great grandma.
My mother told me really wonderful things about her.
Well, no wonder she came through.
So, yeah.
Well, listen, let me just tell you this, okay? She is your main guide. And that means that she is assigned to you over your life. She's been witnessing everything, okay? And she knows, even at her death, she gets basically, when she goes to heaven, goes back to spirit world, they basically, it's almost like a whole movie of your life. She's caught up. She knows what happened to little Jen all the way up to now. So she's very well versed on your life. And now that she is your main guide, basically she is actually the witness too. And she also has a stake in your healing, because she knows that you not only need to heal yourself, but now you actually have the probability of healing the family karma attached to her family.
Okay.
So that's why you're the black sheep. So the black sheep ultimately becomes the chosen one.
Oh, okay.
So
All right.
you've been chosen, whether you step up and do it or not, but you've been chosen to not only heal your life, but to heal the bloodline of your father's family. No big task, right? It's like no pressure.
Yeah, no big task. I think they called her Grandma Fredericks.
Okay.
I know the information's in my brain. I cannot.
You'll get it. You'll get it.
I will. I have it written down.
Yeah, you I want you to text me or whatever later. But she
Yeah.
already told me it's her. It's her. So we
Yeah.
just want to know her name. But it's her. Okay. So I want you to know this, if I don't tell you anything else about your great grandma and her role with you every day. If you want her help, and I believe you do, because she would not have this role. People who become main guides, who are family members, it's not an easy task to be a main guide. Okay, there's a whole initiation ceremony that happens in order for her to become your guide. However, she obviously went through what she needed to order to be your main guide. Given all that, I want you to know that you have such a divine force with you, because she is your main guide, that you can invite her in every day and she will be there with you. Right now she's here, but she's only witnessing. She's not guiding, she's only witnessing. And that's what happens with guides, all of them, but especially main guides. If you don't invite them in, because they're spirits who are they're very reserved, respectful of free will. So if you don't ask them to come in your life every day, you got to do it every day. It's not a one and done situation. What happened yesterday happened yesterday. If you invite them in yesterday and you don't invite them in today, that means you don't want their help today. That's what they look at it as. And she'll just look over you and witness. Okay. Doesn't mean that she won't keep you out of harm's way. But what I'm saying is, in your evolution and your healing, if you don't invite her in every day to help you, she won't come. So it'll be important for you to do that. This is her message to you.
Okay.
She knows you have what it takes to heal yourself and the family. You are tough, but you also must learn to be soft and vulnerable. She wants you to allow others to care for you. She also said that you are not very trusting of other people, which keeps you from feeling genuine affection. She wants you to work on taking the armor from your heart. She wants you to slow down. This is what she says. Slow down, my dear. Stop to smell the roses. She says you have many distractions in your life that is keeping you from doing so. Simple is the way to go. There is more to life than work. When was the last time you did something for yourself? She also said she wants you to create more romance in your marriage. Your husband is the link to your healing. Try to see your dad as the child he still is, hurt, without love or support, living in chaos. If you can see him this way, it may be easier for you not to judge, and maybe you can forgive. She also mentioned that something will be coming to an end. She didn't tell me what it was, but something will be coming to an end. It may be a project. It may be maybe a practice or something you've been doing, but something will be coming to an end. She also mentioned that you will encounter a new spiritual union. It could be through a new friendship. It could be through a new project or an endeavor. In order for it to manifest, you must continue your elevation and your conscious awareness in order for it to come into your life. She also wants you to continue on the path of growth and evolution spiritually. As much as you give to others, she said, give some of that back to yourself. Balance is your key. And that was it.
Yay, that was it. That's awesome. That was awesome. She's my new favorite now. So.
Look, and wait, here I go. Look, when I was reading, you may encounter a spiritual union and friendship. I'm like, look, Jen.
Oh, yay! I was writing. Yay! Oh my God, that's so fun. I know. I was like, what the hell is she talking about? You're all like, hello.
Well, maybe it might be me. I don't know.
Yay! That would be so great. Okay.
You're so cute.
Well, definitely some of that. I mean, some of it I'm like, oh, come on.
Right? But they're so real. They're so real and raw. You're like, okay, okay. But it's true.
Right. And, well, yeah. And some of it I've heard before, like being more soft and vulnerable. Blah, blah, blah. But like there's other stuff like simple is the way, and I'm a minimalist, so that made me smile like, okay.
Good. Okay.
But then you think of all these other things that are happening in your life that pull you away from that potentially, or in other ways too.
Oh, for sure.
Be more trusting, like there's stuff like that. I'm like, it's not like the first time I've heard it. But I get it.
Yeah, you get it. So tell me this, and tell your listeners, what was this experience like with me, with this soul reading? What did you?
Oh, I'm glad that you're asking me this now. Excuse me. Well, I never know what to expect, and I'm always because I don't sign confidentiality. I don't have a contract. Right. I ask my guests to be raw and vulnerable, so this is my way of showing that I'm willing to do the same thing. So I actually love that uncomfortable position, because I want other people to be brave. So I love that, and because I only get coached by people that I've had have been a guest, like I already feel like I know you. So I come into this with a lot of enthusiasm. So for people, I was so excited. And we're recording this during COVID. So regardless of when people listen to, things continue to come up that make it difficult for us to meet. So with you and I today, we were scheduled and you couldn't meet because you were not feeling well.
Right.
And then I spilled a cup of coffee on my laptop yesterday. Right. So I had to figure, like, it wasn't hard. This isn't brain science here, but I had to figure out how to have this meeting with you and be able to have it and record it without having to reschedule it. So I think sometimes things pop up in life that try to stop you from doing what you want to do and what you should do. So I was very determined to not allow that to happen. And it's always nerve-wracking because I don't know what to expect and I know I'm going to be raw, but it wasn't because I knew I was safe with you.
Oh, well, good. Yes.
Yeah, so that's how it felt. So for people that are wondering and curious, I mean, I just do it because it's so enlightening. And also I know that in any coaching session, and soul reading is on a deeper, it's a little different than just like being coached in business or in marketing or something. Those are great. They're wonderful. But when you're talking about a deeper dive, you have to allow your thought process and your emotions and your intuition over a few days and sometimes a couple of weeks after a session like this.
Yes.
So I want to know all the things right now, Deneen. But I know that there's going to be a percolation that happens without me even trying to percolate on it. And things shift. And if you're open to that, it's not a one and done. It's not everything right now.
That's right.
People will be more kind to themselves about this process with you.
Yes.
So I know that, and I'm kind to myself in that way. But for other people coming in, because it's wonderful, but it's not just about what people are seeing recorded right now.
Yes.
Then what is the shifts that are happening within them over
Hmm.
the next few days and few weeks.
That's right. That's right. You raise a valid point, and you're right. And that's what it does. It activates things, and you do
Yeah,
have this recording, just like the clients that I work with, they have the recording to reference, they take notes, and then when you look at the recording again, you're gonna get something different out of it that you missed when you were actually just taking notes for the first time. And it's
right.
something that you can continue to reference and build on, and like I said, it's really set up for you to start to move forward with your healing and actually have a blueprint of, okay, now I know what my karma is. I know what my wounds are. You can also start to identify your triggers, which we started to a little bit
Yeah,
with, and then your lessons. And so if you can have those things, that's huge, because most people don't. They
right.
don't have it. Like I said, you don't have the language because you just don't. You know where you grew up. You know what happened here, but that's it. Like, you haven't had time to unpack that.
Right. And there's a difference between looking at it from the lens of a child to the lens of an adult. And I think you need to do both. Actually, when you say duality, a lot of that comes up for me, that I have to remember that it's okay to have my child, the little girl perspective and the
Hmm.
adult perspective, and to
Yes.
try to marry those two. That
Yes,
takes a lot of work.
it does.
And in that, there's the anger and the frustration and there's whatever the negative words are. But for me, this was great because even if some of it was a reiteration, I clearly needed to know that. I needed that reiterated. And other things were really, really new. So, like, I know I sacrifice too much, but I'm not mindful of shadow and light. Oh,
Mhm.
well, okay. So it was awesome because it was a lot of new things and a lot of things where I'm like, I really need to pay more attention to this because it's come up multiple times. And so
Mhm.
I'm not paying enough attention to this. So I
Mhm.
love it.
Good.
It
Good.
was so fun. I love all your notes and I love all of it.
It's just like, I mean, people are just like, how do you do that? And I've been doing it since I was little.
Well, I thought about that in the beginning when you started. I was like, because we've had our first interview. People should watch that one, listen to that one, because I remember asking you in that, like, as a little kid, what do you do with that information? Like, how, of course, you shut it down.
Of course.
If you don't have anyone helping you and showing you and listening to you and seeing you, you have to shut it down. It is just
It's
overwhelming.
too big. And like you said, who could articulate that? Not me. I was 5 when this started. Do you think I would have been able to say, oh, and by the way, I think I'm being prepared to be a shaman?
Yeah, all right. Okay. Right. I mean, it's so interesting. And I remember being 17 and in college, and we all took the Myers-Briggs. It was a really, really great thing to do because it forced us at very young people to really
Hmm.
look at who we were in that
Right.
way.
Yes.
And my number one profession, because it helped us decide, are we looking into the correct profession and what others
Right.
are there, was being a pastor. Right. And I knew right at that moment, I'm not going to be a pastor.
Right. Right.
But
Right.
I ended up having 18 kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
And those may seem super different,
Yeah.
except,
Yeah.
right, they're not. So I think it's interesting, when you have someone from the outside like you looking at life and the situation without any baggage, without any bias,
Hmm.
without even knowing the information and
Hmm.
presenting this, because it's kind of, I mean, it's much bigger than being 17 and taking the Myers-Briggs, but it puts this all information out for me to disseminate.
Hmm.
And then I can decide, is that really the profession? Or is it something very similar that looks a lot different? And so
Yes.
you're doing that in such a different, deeper way. And I really appreciate that a lot.
You're so welcome. I really, I'm really honored that you would allow me to read your soul. I don't take it for granted. It's not something that I do, just kind of haphazardly. Anytime someone gives me the honor and privilege to read and connect with their soul, it truly is. It's like the greatest compliment that I could have, to be perfectly honest, because that's what I'm here to do. I'm actually living out my holy assignment, which is to help people greater, just better understand their life and looking at their pain differently, giving it a new lens, and actually empowering them to do something with the pain instead of just carry it.
Yeah, well, that's good because it helps us to figure out where to put these things and how to assign them. And that's a lot easier. So thank you so
You're
much.
so welcome. You're so welcome.
Uh,